Every day we encounter strangers, whether it is a conscious decision or not. We stand behind them in the line at the store. We drive next to them on the road. And if you're like me, it's natural to smile at someone when you make eye contact. It's just what I do. It's not because I'm asking for them to notice me or remember me. It's just natural. But what happens when someone does remember you? When that smile or that second of eye contact switches something in their brain? What if they remember you long after the encounter is over? Welcome back to Static Hour. I'm Bree. Before we jump into tonight's broadcast, we want to hear from you. What's the creepiest encounter that you've ever had with a stranger? For me, I really don't have any that stand out. I have some moments that are jarring at the time, but nothing that has been crazy enough to warrant a Reddit story. So I'm curious. I love reading your stories, and if you have a great one, maybe it will get featured on an episode. Before we get into the stories tonight, there are a few trigger warnings that I wanted to mention. This one does have a story that includes talks of self-harm, and then the usual kind of home invasion, stalking, attempted kidnapping, our usual topics. So as always, listener discretion is advised. Let's get into the stories. All right, story number 1. The user is called Staring Void. This is from the subreddit Creepy Encounters, and this one was posted 6 years ago. It's called Somebody Broke Into My House and Tried to Find Me. A few years ago, I was renting a house in Northern California. The neighborhood was just outside the suburbs. It seemed like the perfect balance of having space and having nice neighbors close enough not to feel isolated. The area had no streetlights, so it was very dark at night, especially if there were clouds blocking the moon. It didn't bother me, though. It made my little house feel even more quaint on dark nights. I got home from work one day in midwinter. It was a cloudy night, so pulling up to my house, I saw only what my headlights and porch light illuminated. When I got out of my car, I caught a whiff of cigarette smoke. That was odd, as I had never smelled that before around the house. I didn't see anyone nearby, so I ignored it when I went inside. I had just got off a shift with a few hours of overtime, so I felt pretty tired. Even though it wasn't even 7 yet, I decided to take a shower and call it a night. I woke up sometime later, sure that I had heard a noise inside my house. I wasn't worried right away because my friend would sometimes stop by to use my shower after work on his way to his night classes. I even gave him a spare key so he could stop by even if I wasn't there. He would always text me to let me know beforehand, though, and I hadn't heard my phone go off. I reached over to my bedside table and picked up my cell phone to see if my friend had sent me a text. The bright light from my phone screen and number pad blinded me. These were the days before phones had a light sensor that would dim the screen in the dark, and this particular phone was so bright I could use it as a flashlight. Through squinted eyes, I could make out that it was 9-something, but I couldn't tell if I had an unread text or not. I set my phone aside and called out my friend's name. There were a couple of seconds of silence before I heard loud footfalls as someone started running through the bottom floor of my house. I already really don't like it. Just the thought of someone running. I leapt out of bed and ran to the closet. They were already up the stairs by the time I'd opened the door and stepped inside. Ugh. That house had 3 rooms upstairs, 2 bedrooms on either side of the hallway, the one I was in and a spare, and a bathroom at the end. The bedroom doors were both closed, but the bathroom door was cracked open. I heard whoever was in my house thunder down the hallway past my door and into the bathroom. Thank goodness he did. That gave me enough time to open the attic access in the ceiling of my closet and hoist myself up. I had just started to lift myself up when the person ran back out of the bathroom. My feet were barely inside of the attic when my bedroom door burst open. I heard footsteps run into my room and stop. When they didn't see me in that room, they ran back to the hallway and into the other room, which just had boxes stacked in a corner, some weights, and a table where I painted my miniature models. I guess they decided that if someone was hiding, it would be in the bedroom, because they charged back into my room and turned on the light. A moment later, the closet door was ripped open. I was crouched in my attic, just a foot or so away from the access, so I could try to stop them if they started to climb up. From my vantage point, all I could see was from about their knees down. They were wearing dirty blue jeans with frayed cuffs and worn work boots. After a few seconds of looking in the closet, they stepped away, and I heard a loud crash come from my room, followed by a scream of frustration and anger. That scream was the most unnerving part of the incident for me. It reminded me far too much of my stepfather, who would scream in a similar way when he lost his temper. He would eventually be put in a mental hospital for several mental disorders that resulted in erratic and violent tendencies. Okay, and just so we're clear, when I first read this story, I thought that they were kind of implying that it could have been her stepfather, but I don't think that is the case. The man in my house ran back down the stairs. I heard crashes and clatters as things were thrown around and furniture was knocked over. I stayed crouched in the attic. I had left my cell phone when I ran for the closet, and I wasn't certain I could climb down without him hearing. After some time, the noises stopped. I started counting slowly. When I reached 1,000, I decided it was safe enough to climb down and call the police. The first thing I noticed when I exited the closet was that the intruder had flipped my bed over. That's insane. I assume in an attempt to find me. That was the loud noise I had heard after he stepped away from the closet. I couldn't find my cell phone, so I went to the landline by the bed and called the police. I waited in my room until I heard them call out from downstairs. Okay, I'm curious. I know lots of households these days don't have landlines anymore, but I also know, I've heard of people having them just for emergencies, and I kind of feel like that's smart. So if you have a landline, let me know. I'm just curious of how, common that is. I feel like it's really not very common. Also, my thought is, it sounds like he obviously took the cell phone, unless it's just hiding and they couldn't find it. But if he took the cell phone, that means that now he has access to all that stuff, which is even more terrifying. The first floor was a mess, but I had expected that. Chairs had been knocked over, the sofa had been flipped, all the books, pictures, and knickknacks I had on my shelves were strewn across the floor. The cupboards in the kitchen had been opened, and all the boxed canned foods had been thrown to the ground. As far as I could tell, though, the only thing missing was a single knife out of the wooden block in my kitchen. The police checked the house from top to bottom. They found that the side door had been forced open by something like a crowbar. They also found a few cigarette butts along my fence line, along with some foil and an empty pen tube, which the police said people often used to smoke meth. So they think he had been watching my house for a while. I realized that he must have been out there smoking a cigarette when I got home. That's so scary, and I would immediately be putting motion sensor lights around my house. They collected up the evidence and told me I should stay with family or friends that night and get the door fixed as soon as possible. I opted to just not sleep. Okay, time out. I would be moving that night or I would be leaving and staying away for probably a week at least or so. This person just stays and is like, okay, well, instead of leaving, I'm just going to hang out and just not sleep. Like, what? That is brave of you. I'm glad everything obviously is okay because they wrote this. But how scary is it that this random person that you have no idea could come back? Like, you don't know. That part freaks me out. I moved a shelf over to block the broken door and spent the next couple of hours cleaning things up. I would often go to the window with the flashlight and shine it along the fence line where the police found the cigarette butts and foil, but I didn't see anything. The next day, I called to have the door fixed and motion lights installed at the back and sides of my house. Good job. I ran a phone cable up into the attic and added a landline. Genius. That is so smart. I never wanted to be stuck up there without a phone again. Nothing else happened at that house, though. I lived there another 3 years without an incident. It's crazy that, they just kind of came that one time, but I don't know. One more precaution I took was practicing getting out of my bed, going to my closet, and climbing into the attic as quickly and quietly as possible. I even kept at it when I moved, except now I go to a crawl space at the back of the closet instead of the attic. I try not to think about what would have happened if I had been a bit slower getting to the attic, or if he hadn't gone to the bathroom at the end of the hall first. This story is wild to me because if you did not notice, they said the only thing that was found missing was a single knife out of the wooden block in their kitchen. And that is terrifying because that doesn't mean that they were trying to break in to steal things. That doesn't mean that they were just break in. It literally means that they had an intent to hurt this person in their house. Most burglar stories or things like break-in stories that you hear, it's like if they get spooked and maybe they thought that no one was home or whatever, they leave as soon as they realize, oh, people are here, I gotta go. This person did the opposite, and as soon as they heard someone, they hunted them down, essentially. That's so much scarier to me. I don't know. I'm wondering how long they were stalking this house, because it just seems like even if they were on drugs or whatever, it just sounds a little more methodical than just kind of a spur of the moment decision, but I don't know. I don't do drugs, so I couldn't tell you what they were thinking or what they weren't thinking. But I also thought that practicing, going to your hiding spot is so smart. I know, they always told us in school and things like that you need to have a emergency plan if there's ever a fire in your house. And so we would tell our kids, or, our parents would work with us and tell us, okay, if there's a fire, this is what you need to do. This is where you will go. This is what will happen, kind of thing. And we've done that with our own kids. But one thing I've never thought of was doing it in different situations. The fact that they've had an attic and a crawl space in their bedroom, number one, would freak me out so bad. But for them, worked really well. And it was honestly just such a smart idea. So I am very glad that OP was okay after all of this. And I'm also just so surprised that they were able to stay there for 3 more years. I think I would be too scared. I honestly, if it happened once, who's to say it couldn't happen again? And I know that it could happen anywhere. I get it. But for me, I would feel uneasy every single night that I came home. All right, moving on to the next story. This is by user Prize Knowledge 2502. The subreddit is Creepy Encounters, and this one is a newer one. The title is I Did Not Tell Him Her Name. About 2 years ago, as I was taking my dog for a walk at night after school, as I did every day, something very unsettling happened to me. As I was walking the route that I go on every day, I noticed it was a bit foggy, but still clear enough to see about 5 meters in front of me. I was listening to music as always when I saw a taller than me guy, which wasn't hard because at the time I was 14, with a blue cap walking frantically towards me. Something that I didn't think too much about because the people in my neighborhood were good people. I didn't recognize him though. Maybe he was from the next neighborhood. Oh, how wrong I was. As he was approaching me, I saw in his hand a flip phone, something that I haven't seen since 2013. As our distance narrowed to about 2 meters between us, he closed his phone and approached me. The thing is that my dog wasn't even tense. It even greeted him. He asked me in a formal language if I had some spare money so he could go buy some aspirin for his headache. I told him I only pay with a card, and he asked if I could go with him to the pharmacy and buy it for him because he was very ill. He really looked ill, and the pharmacy wasn't even 600 meters away. So, as a person that had seen prolific things in my city, I still chose to go and help him. As I was walking with him, we started a conversation about my dog. He asked me if it was a border collie, which my dog was, in fact. I didn't think anything of it at the time, as it isn't a hard one to identify. When we were about 2 minutes from the pharmacy, he asked if he could pet her. I said yes, and as he squatted down to pet her, he said something along the lines of, "Hello, Chara." My dog's name is Chara. I did not tell him her name. My balls fell down to my heels of fear. My first instinct was to wait for him to stand up and kick him in the balls as hard as I could. I had been a semi-professional boxer at the time and was going to a tournament in 2 months, but the fear that came on throughout all the training I'd been through the past year and a half. That's incredible that you're a semi-pro boxer at the age of 14. What? He stood up and I kicked him, and he instantly fell down. I grabbed my dog and started running toward the nearby school, which was closed but had its door opened. As I got there, I saw him limping towards me. I hid in the spot I always used to as a kid when playing hide and seek. It was behind tall grass in a small hole that was leading to a room in the basement. I can't picture that because I'm guessing it is outside of the school, but there's also a basement. So is it like maybe just an entrance, an outside? I don't know. I couldn't visualize that one. I had a really hard time with that. I saw him circling around with that same flip phone pressed to his ear, slowly whispering some things that I did not hear. I saw him circling 2 or 3 more times, waited about 15 minutes, and got out of the hole. I picked up my dog again and ran home as fast as an Olympic sprinter. All right, I just want to pause real quick because there are a few things that instantly gave me red flags about this story. Number 1, do not ever walk the same route every single day. Again, as I said in the beginning of the episode, you never know who is paying attention to you. You never know who's watching you. This guy could have been watching this kid for months, and he knew, okay, this time, every single day, he's going to walk here. I can meet him here. It's so easy for people to kind of plan out their actions when yours are so predictable. Again, I'm not victim blaming at all. I feel like I am also a very predictable person. But when you can, try to change up little things in your routine. It's just kind of one of those things that is something that we don't normally think of, but a good PSA. The other thing is like, how did he know his dog's name? I don't understand. Again, it could be because he was watching him for so long and maybe he just kind of heard it in passing. But again, the dog was not scared. So did he follow him home and he like warmed up to the dog in the backyard? Like, that's the part that is so creepy to me because it's just so unanswered. You never know. All right, there's a little bit more, but I just had to say all that. Since then, I haven't seen him again for about 4 months. When I saw him, he was talking to a young lady, and then they went to some apartment building. I was too far away to reach them in time, and she didn't hear me yelling. But maybe it was someone else. I may have mistaken him. I hope to have been mistaken. I am in a Balkan country, so these things don't shock many people. I don't have PTSD nor trauma, and I even laugh sometimes when I tell this story. For everyone asking how I picked up a border collie and ran with her, I had been working at construction sites since I was a kid. I may not have been very tall, but I had the strength and adrenaline to do it. I love how, like, that's the question people are asking. How'd you pick up your dog? Like, what? Who cares? Like, I'm glad that he was able to. That's crazy. All right. OP, glad you're okay. And hopefully nothing ever happened to anyone else. I hope that it was just a different person you saw. I don't know. All right, next story. This is from user otherwise Sir76, and the subreddit is Creepy Encounters. This story was posted about a year ago. And it's called Date with a Psychopath? Okay. So, when I was around 20, female, I was newly single and exploring the apps. I matched with this guy named Alex. He wasn't my usual type, but his profile seemed cool. It showed he was in school, had a car, job, plus friends, so he didn't seem weird to me at all. Ladies, we have set the bar low, haven't we? We got to talking, and he seemed pretty into me, so we set up a date. He came to pick me up for a, quote, driving date. So basically, sitting in his car for hours, driving around. And then in parentheses, they said, yes, I don't know why I did this, but blame it on being young and dumb. Girl, I totally get it. I did the same thing. So he started driving. We drove for about 40 minutes all the way downtown. Mind you, during these 40 minutes, he was blasting music at full volume with the windows down. Everyone on the sidewalk was staring at us while he's screaming the lyrics out the window. When I brought up that I thought it was a little loud, he said, nah, everyone loves it. They, in fact, did not love it, I can assure you. I'm also going to go out on a limb and say no girl ever finds that attractive. Okay, no, maybe I don't speak for all, but I have been in a position kind of like that, and it's so cringy. It is not cute. It is not attractive that you can turn your radio up really loud. I don't like it. And I'm sure the people on the streets also did not like it. I don't understand why guys do this. I think to them, it's like, yes, I've got that bass. She's going to love it. I don't know. I don't know what they're thinking when they do this. But young guys, it's just what they be doing sometimes, you know? It's so cringy. Anyway, we get to the heart of downtown and he parks outside a very famous and prominent tower in the city. I hate this sentence. He then gets down on the ground and just stares at it. No warning, nothing. This is when I started to think it was a little strange. Same, girl. He then hopped up and said, let's go get some food now. It was very strange. Okay, I'm picturing, she says gets down on the ground. So I'm picturing he's laying on his stomach, just looking up at this tower, which is insane. what are we doing? I also love how he didn't explain anything to her. He just did this. So now we begin driving to get food, and he drives 2 cities outside of the one we're in. Essentially, we've been driving now for hours. What? You were downtown. You were downtown. You know there was restaurants there. And he goes, not 1, but 2 cities away. What? I'm so confused. While on this drive, he starts spewing racist BS and then abruptly tells me that he is a very depressed and troubled person. And he asked me if I had ever done the, quote, slicey dicey to my wrists. With this, I was very taken aback and I didn't know what to say. I mean, I have literally known this man for a few hours at this point, and I did not think the conversation would get this deep. He confided in me and told me that he had been hospitalized before for self-harm. At this point, the vibe he was giving off was getting scary, and I started to feel in danger. But I was even more scared that if I offended him, something bad could happen. Let's not forget, I am in his car, he has my home address, and I am 2 cities outside of mine. Okay, PSA, again, you know what I'm going to say. Don't ever let a date come pick you up at your house if you have not been dating them for a long time. That is so, so scary. Even if it's just hey, yes, you can come pick me up, which I still would be very uncomfortable with because you are at the mercy of them. You don't know how they drive. You don't know where they're going to take you. Even if you need them to pick you up, walk 2 blocks over from your house or something. Do not let them see where you live. That is so, so scary. And I know that I would probably do the same thing if I was in this position. You just don't think about it. But, being from the outside in, we can look and be like, oh, that is so scary. Do not do that. So that's why I'm telling you, the listener, don't do that. So I played nice. We finally got to a food spot and ate some dinner. And then in parentheses, at least he paid, right? Anyways, now is when it starts to get really creepy. I thought it's been creepy the entire time, but now she's getting really creeped out. We begin driving again back to our city, but he keeps taking the long way. So our 1-hour drive turns more into a 3-hour drive. Oh my goodness. At this point, we're back in the city, but it's really late at night, around 11:30. This is when he goes into a dark neighborhood and he starts driving very fast around tight roads and corners. Oh, I hate that. As he's doing this, I ask him to slow down because he's scaring me. And he turns and looks at me with no emotion and says, I've had some really hard days in my life. And I said, I know, you told me, I'm so sorry. Then he said, I used to hurt so bad that I would come and drive my car just like this to run over squirrels so something else could hurt as much as I did. Okay. I really hate it. I was in shock. I was honestly very terrified with what he said, and not to mention his strangeness from the start. All I could do was ask if he still did it, and he said, no, not anymore. I knew that wasn't true, but I thought if I offended him, he could easily overpower me. So play it nice again? At this point, we were very close to my home, about 10 minutes. Then, abruptly, he asked if I'd been to this park that's coming up. The park is at the bottom of a cliff, and it's in the middle of the night. I have been to this park, but even if I hadn't, I would have said yes, because there was no way I wanted that man to drive me down the very dark road to the bottom of the park, where the parking lot was completely empty with about 6 streetlights total. Needless to say, I thought I would be his first victim. Since I'm here, I obviously wasn't. But his tone and mannerisms were so strange while we were there. He forced me to kiss him pretty intimately and got handsy while I kept pushing him off. It didn't escalate past that. And then he drove me home. Ugh, Opie, I am so sorry. That is awful. I blocked his number and all socials after that, but I often wonder if I really did go on a date with a psychopath. The story is so scary, and unfortunately, I feel like we have heard several other stories just like this. I also wonder what happened to him after this point, if there were victims of anything, because he really checks off quite a few boxes. And of course, we're not trying to psychoanalyze him or label him as anything, but he does have some similarities with some other psychopaths that we've heard of before. Opie, very glad you're okay. And I know after this, you did things much differently, but super glad you're okay. And I just hope that there were no victims. All right, next story. This is from user Response Mammoth 694. The subreddit is Creepy Encounters, and this was a couple weeks ago. The post is called, "He's been outside our door for 8 hours. Oh, I hate that. I don't know what to do. My partner and I live in a condo-like situation, with our apartment being at the end of the lot and a trail leading to another street right next to our door. There's no fencing or gate to our condo. I, 29 female, live with my partner, 31 male, and our dog." And then in parentheses it said 11, but just a baby. "Last night, our dog was going crazy. Then I heard my partner say something downstairs and shut the door. He's used to not locking the door all the time. He grew up in a place where he didn't necessarily need to, I guess. So sometimes when he enters, he just doesn't lock the door. Turns out a guy opened the door and tried to walk into our apartment, which is why I heard him say something and then shut the door. We thought maybe he just got the wrong apartment, so we left it at that. At this point, it's like 10 o'clock and we both have to work tomorrow, so an hour or so later we go to sleep. Well, our dog has been barking at the door since then. Kind of sporadically, maybe once every hour or so. But she does that sometimes, so again, we brushed it off. Around 4 a.m., our dog is now going berserk. And then someone starts pounding on our door at 4 a.m. At this point, we're thinking it's probably the same guy from earlier. So my partner goes to yell at whoever it is through our door, and the guy is saying that his wife is in our apartment and that she's cheating on him, and she's no longer a Christian woman. And they said, I'm not his wife and not a Christian. My partner tells him that his wife is not here. He's got to leave. But the guy is persistent, so we call the police. The guy takes off, surprise. The police can't do anything, so they leave and tell us to call if he comes back. Well, he's back. I can hear him from our bedroom window shuffling outside and talking to himself. If I call the police, he'll just run away again and then possibly come back when they leave. So what do? I leave for work when it's still dark out. And then they said in parentheses, probably not today though, being as he is still outside. What if we call the police, he runs away, and then he's back again tonight? And then they have an update. Call the cops again. They got him to leave for now, but couldn't technically arrest him. Heard the officer talking to him though, and it turns out he was just in jail for criminal trespassing. I wonder if he'll come back later. Okay, if he was just in jail, I'm assuming that he would be out on parole. So they should have been able to arrest him. He is trespassing. He literally came into their house. I'm so confused. Number one, lock your doors, please. I feel like after this incident, they probably have locked their doors every single day. And when I read the comments of this one, there was a lot of people really dogging on the husband for not locking their doors. But it's not, I am very paranoid about locking my doors. My husband will sometimes forget, and then I have to go back and lock them and check them and lock them and check them. It's fine. But yeah, depending on where you grew up, you might not have. If he lived in the middle of nowhere with literally no neighbors and stuff, I'm sure they felt pretty safe and didn't lock their doors. But there were literally people he is endangering your life and you should leave him. Like, the Redditors came out with this one. So I think it's okay, but I feel like from now on, you better make him lock the door. Also, I just can't believe, like, it's so frustrating to me how the police can't do anything until something big happens. You couldn't have patrolled the area, but they did catch him. Like, they got him to leave. They were talking to him. So why? Like, why do they think that it's sufficient enough to say, hey, you need to go, don't come back? And think that a person who is just in jail for trespassing is going to listen. Like, that is so frustrating. I'm not blaming anyone. I'm sure, like, the cops are just following their protocols and stuff. I just think that is a really messed up thing. I don't know. How can you feel safe when the people that you're supposed to call don't really help when you call? I don't know. Okay, sorry. That was my rant. This is from user Pesfy678. I'm sure I said that wrong. This is from the subreddit Let's Not Meet. And the post is called The Man on My Patio. This story, the first time I read it, really got to me, and you'll see why. Warning. Long post, but I recommend you to read it all. This happened when I was around 9 years old, 25 now, and it's something I will never forget. It gives me goosebumps to this day. I live in a terraced house, which is 4 houses combined, and my neighbors and I each have our own little patio. There's a small road 10 meters from my yard where people will do their Sunday walks and so on. Only a small fence separates my yard and patio from that road. I live in a pretty crowded area with several of these terraced houses spread around my neighborhood. So seeing people walking on that road is pretty normal for me. Seeing random people standing on my patio is not. When I was 9, I usually got home from school about an hour before my mom got home from work. I live maybe 50 meters away from school, so my mom figured that I was mature enough to be home alone for an hour before she got home. This one day, I got home from school. I did the usual thing, which was to make sure I locked the door and double-check that the back door leading to the patio was also locked. Smart kid. And then in parentheses, it says, I was 9. Being alone was a little scary, even though it was in the middle of the day and only for an hour. I then rushed to my room upstairs to play as much PlayStation as possible before my mom came home and made me do homework. I feel like we all did the same thing when we were kids. While playing, I heard this noise coming from outside my window. My room was located 1 floor over the patio, with a view to the road that I told you about before. It was kind of like the sound of a cat, but my cat had been missing for over 3 months. Hope sparked, and I thought, did he finally come back? Oh. I ran downstairs to check if it was my cat, but the sight that met me gives me goosebumps just writing this. There was a guy standing on my patio. A tall guy with black hair covering half of his eyes, making him look like a male version of the Ring woman or something. Oh, no, I don't like that visual. I could hear him making high-pitched sounds, almost like a cat meowing. A brown liquid, was running down from his mouth, and I could see him spitting out my dad's stomped cigarettes. He was actually eating from the ashtray. As a kid, this has to be so terrifying. I cannot imagine. I was frozen observing this. Eventually, I snapped out of it and screamed so loud that the man must have heard it. He didn't react, though. He kept on eating from the ashtray. I ran upstairs to my room, locked the door, and called my mom, who then called the cops. I've never been more terrified in my life. Laying in my bed under my sheets, shivering with fear, as I heard these creepy, high-pitched noises from the guy eating cigarette stomps from the ashtray on my patio. I kind of blacked out for a moment because the next thing I remember is the police arriving on the road by my yard. I heard them talking to the guy, saying stuff like, "What are you doing? Get over here or we will come down and arrest you," and so on. He didn't respond, but the high-pitched sound was more frequent and louder. I decided to look through the window, feeling safe now that the cops were there. I could see 2 police officers standing by my fence, 1 man and 1 woman. I did not see the creepy man, however, because he was standing directly 1 story under me in my field of view. The police jumped the fence, and I remember hearing the creepy guy screaming louder than anything I've ever heard before. He charged the female police officer with full force, and he knocked her out cold. That's insane. The male officer then immediately tased the guy, leaving him shaking on the ground, screaming still. The policeman struggled to keep him on the ground while putting handcuffs on him, but eventually made it. Oh, that is so scary. After a while, he managed to wake up the female police officer, who seemed to be badly hurt. He called for backup in an ambulance, and then he sees me standing in the window above him. The expression on my face must have been something else, because he just looked at me and said, "I sure as heck hope you didn't see all that." I started to cry. Oh. By the time the neighbors started to arrive, wondering what the heck was going on, one of my neighbors, an elderly woman, made me come down, and she took care of me until my mom came back home. Oh. The police took the creepy guy with them in the car and left. Before they left, they promised to come back and talk to us about what had happened. This is where the story takes an unexpected turn. The male police officer came back later that night and sat down with me and my mom to talk. He explained that the guy on my patio was actually diagnosed with severe autism. He had escaped a facility where mentally challenged people lived, located about 5 kilometers from where I lived. He explained that the guy had actually been living in my house 5 years ago, but he had been forced to move when his mom, his only caretaker, had died. The poor guy probably thought he would find his mom in my house. He missed the routines, and he missed living there with his mom. The police had to move him from the house that time 5 years ago because he was extremely strong. And then in parentheses it said, from what I heard, he had extreme tensions in the body because of the autism, making his muscles grow stronger and stronger throughout the years. This was the reason he reacted the way he did when the police came this day. Still frightened, I told the police officer that he needed to make sure this would never happen again. He promised it wouldn't. After a few sleepless nights, my life got back to normal. The years went by and the guy didn't come back. Until 1 year ago. At this time, my mom and dad had moved out. I bought the house from them, and I'm still living there today. I was enjoying my morning coffee on the patio when I see this random guy stopping on the road by my fence. He just stands there looking at me. I look at him and give him a nod. And then I hear the high-pitched noises. Holy crap, it's him. His hair had turned gray, but the high-pitched sounds made me realize who he was. My heart started racing, and I instantly remembered the reason why he was back. I realized that he must have managed to escape again. Because I kept my cool a bit longer than when I was 9, I started to realize how sorry I felt for the guy. 16 years later, and he was back to look for his mom. I decided to carefully ask him if he wanted to come down to the patio. He instantly jumped the fence. I started to think that he would knock me out like he did to that police officer, but he didn't. He smiled. He looked at me and smiled. I offered him to sit down. He didn't respond. I offered him to come inside. He started laughing. We went inside and his face lit up. It was pure joy. He was home. It reminded him of the life he had with his mom. It almost made me tear up. I'm getting a little choked up, I'm not gonna lie. And I've already read this story. All of a sudden, he sat down on my couch, turned on my TV, and switched directly to the cartoons. I observed him for a while. He was just completely focused on the cartoons. I just wanted him to enjoy that moment. so I didn't say anything to him. I realized I had to call the facility to let them know. The caretakers arrived 10 minutes later. After a lot of convincing, he got back up, crying, and they went back to the facility. I called the facility 2 days later and we made a deal. His name is Tom, and I now consider Tom my friend. I'm going to try to read this without crying. Every Sunday from the day he returned, Tom and his caretakers visit me to watch cartoons. They say it's the highlight of his week. It makes my heart warm. Now, for several years, my thoughts were, let's not meet guy on my patio eating from the ashtray. But now my thoughts are, let's meet every Sunday to watch cartoons, my friend Tom. Ugh, this one just gets me. It's so scary turned really sweet. I would recommend you don't just let people that you don't know into your house, but in this case, I'm so glad it worked out. And the writer sounds like the nicest human being, because I know a lot of us probably couldn't get over the fact that they were traumatized from that person such a long time ago. But I think this is just the best ending for this story. And I did not see it coming the first time I read this, and it's just beautiful. I hope that you also liked that story, and hopefully I was not the only one that got choked up. All right, we have one more story to go, and we are totally switching gears because this one is very creepy. And the ending is not as sweet as the last one. All right, this is from user HighWraith9092 from the subreddit Backwoods Creepy. This was posted about a year ago, and it's called Strange Encounter Tent Visit in the Sierra Nevadas. I am a long-distance hiker. I have hiked the entire JMT twice in both directions. I have hiked many miles of the Pacific Crest Trail, as well as numerous random trips in my time in the outdoors. I have probably a year of collective time sleeping outside in the wilderness, and I've hiked over 2,000 miles collectively. I've only managed to encounter 2 bears, some coyotes. I've smelled a mountain lion and heard one chirping at me. I'm not a big believer in cryptids and such, but I do have a story that makes me question that. Just this is a side note, I'm not a hiker. So this is all wild to me, but it sounds like they have done a lot. So go in with that knowledge. In 2022, I hiked the John Muir Trail in the Sierra Nevada in California. It is a long-distance hiking trail that spans 211 miles from Yosemite Valley to Mount Whitney and takes about a month to complete. Whoa. The trail is remote and located in some of the most amazing, untouched nature the country has to offer. I hiked the previous year in a traditional southbound direction, and in 2022, I hiked the trail northbound toward Yosemite with my wife and a female friend of ours. This story is on that 2022 trip. One day, about halfway through our trip, when the afternoon was getting ready to end, we decided to camp in a place called Grouse Meadows. I don't know if I said that right. The previous year, I enjoyed fishing here, and the gentle river that curves back and forth through the meadow makes it a nice place to swim and filter water. We started to make camp for the night, and I noticed a large buck about 10 yards from us staring at us. It then started approaching us, and I yelled at it to just get away. It circled around us a bit and then left down the way that we came in from. That's a really odd encounter. I don't know if y'all have ever been around deer, but they're very skittish from my experience. So the fact that it stared at them and then walked closer to them is wild to me. But maybe that's normal for some people, and maybe it's the fact that, well, no. I was going to say maybe it is because there's a lot of people that come into the area and it's used to that. But he said that this trail is pretty remote, I think. So it doesn't sound like there are lots of visitors just coming in and out. But I don't know. I decided I was going to catch a few fish before the sun went down, and maybe we would have some fish tacos for the night. The girls agreed and said that they would finish making camp. We split a 3-person tent, so it was easy. As I went down toward the small river in the meadow, there was a large rock near where we were camping. It was about the size of a 2-car garage and about that tall as well. That's huge. Large enough you couldn't see over it. When I passed it, I noticed a young man walking around it in my direction. I wasn't surprised because by this time, most people are already getting camp ready as it gets cold and dark fast in the Sierra. But I was a bit confused on where he had come from, as he was not on a trail. He was just walking straight through a meadow with a river running through it, away from any trail. As he got closer, I noticed he was only wearing a small day pack, blue running shorts, and a white t-shirt, all completely clean. That may not sound strange, but when you are multiple days away from any trailhead that leads out of the mountain, it sure is strange. I was kind of walking away from him toward the river, but it seemed like he was following me. So I stopped and said, "Hey man, how's it going?" He replied, "Hello," in a very plain, monotone voice. He then said to me in the same voice, "What are you doing?" I replied, "Well, I'm going fishing," as if it wasn't obvious as I had a rod and reel in my hand. He didn't laugh. As he kept following, he said, "What will you do with the fish?" I said, "If it's big enough and not pregnant, I'm going to eat it." At this point, I stopped by a little beach on the side of the river, and he passed by me, and I felt relief. He just seemed off to me. But then, just when he was about 20 feet past me, he stopped and turned around along the beach and squatted down and watched me fish. That would be so unnerving. You're literally in the middle of nowhere, and now a person is just watching you fish. Eventually, I pulled one in, and it was a good size. I prepared to clean it, and just as I pulled the guts out of the fish, he said, "How does it taste?" I looked over at him, waiting to hear a joke or something, and he was smiling. A terrible feeling came over me, like that hair on your neck type of feeling. I said, "Well, I have to clean it first, man, and then cook it, you know?" I said it in a way that would have come off to normal people as, "I am done talking to you," as a back off type of way. I stuck my knife in the sand in front of me and didn't put it away. The man after a while said, "I'm hiking 30 miles today." And I said, "That's nice, man, have fun." And he just stood up and walked off into the meadow toward a tree line, not on or near any trail, and vanished into the woods. I went back to camp and didn't really say anything to the girls because I didn't want to scare them. The night came in, we ate, and we went to bed, and I mostly forgot about it. Again, the fact that people forget about the craziest, wildest things that happen to them blows my brain. Like, that's great, I guess, if you can compartmentalize. But if I'm in the middle of nowhere with, my wife and someone else, that would be all I could think about. And I would be like, maybe we should go camp somewhere else. Maybe we should find a different spot. I wake up. I felt woken up. I noticed both girls sitting up, and my wife said, "There's something there." I was so tired, I just said, "No, there isn't. Just go back to bed." I lay down, and so did the girls, and within seconds, heard a very fast, shuffling sound. And I sat up, and so did the girls. I said, "Oh yeah, there's definitely something there." I use a small foam sitting mat outside my inner tent in the vestibule for shoes at night and to sit on during the day. And I saw it moving and could feel it moving. Something was literally right outside our tent. I grabbed my headlamp and our bear spray, and with my heart exploding out of my chest, I zipped open the tent, ready to battle whatever was there. And there was nothing. Not even a distant sound. It was dead silent, like your ear ringing silent. Maybe a squirrel or something. Or that buck, I said. Okay, but you didn't see anything and they were just there. Oh, I hate it. Mm-hmm. We laid down and this ended up happening like 7 more times. Every time, nothing. Eventually, I started to actually pass out because how exhausted I was. And I only really remember cursing at it as I fell back to sleep. I woke up again and I looked over and both my wife and our friend were asleep. I heard the sound again and I got ready my bear spray and worked up the courage. I zipped open the tent and there he was, about 15 feet away. Oh no. The same guy was on all fours in an almost push-up-like position, staring directly at me with that face. It was completely silent. Nope, I hate it. Then he crawled backwards into the dark with a speed that I cannot explain. Oh, I woke up. I was so relieved it was a dream. It was a dream? What? In the morning, I told them I had dreamed that there was something at the tent, and they looked at me like I was joking. Our friend said, "Yeah, there was. You didn't dream that." My heart sank. I said, "What about the guy?" And they said, "What guy?" So what? Was the guy part a dream? I'm so confused. They only remember seeing that guy down with me by the river, so he was real, even if it was just a dream that he visited the tent. They also recalled not understanding why they fell asleep so fast when something was outside, and that they felt like there was a blank in their memory before falling to sleep. We all agreed that there was a general feeling that was just off in that place. I don't really tell the story because it sounds fake and stupid to me when I say it to myself, but it is real. I will never sleep in that meadow again. And then they have a couple of edits. Number 1, the feeling I had waking up when I saw the man outside my tent was similar to sleep paralysis, but I could move. And then edit number 2. A few days prior to this event, we had come across an obsidian site on the south side of Mather Pass and took a few shards with us. I remembered this detail while reading another post describing native petroglyphs in the story. Okay, and I read some of the comments because I didn't understand what, was the big deal about the obsidian. And there were several people that said that that's like bad luck. One person said, "I went to Obsidian Dome near Mammoth and June Lake recently. You're not supposed to collect obsidian there, but I took 4 small little ones from some random spot. They were riding with me on my trip for a few days, and I was called to dispose of them at a certain point because almost everything got weird after collecting them. The energy of that site is really strange, and even now just typing this, I'm getting a really weird feeling coming over me. Obsidian is supposed to be protective, but because it's black, I also feel like it absorbed whatever energy from that site." So this person was like, "That's really weird." And the same type of thing happened between that and what I went through kind of thing. There's also a person that ended up like linking like 3 different stories to this comment thread. And so I did save those and we may come back to those a little bit later. Someone said, "Native Americans used to travel through the wilderness, but I have heard that they would sometimes carry weapons with them and would pray before going to bed at night, and they would not enter certain areas that they believed to be dangerous or off." That was our last story, and I hope that you are as creeped out as I was with that one, because even if it's just a dream, I have never dreamt of someone crawling backwards. And if this is not your first time listening to this podcast, you know that is one of my biggest fears. Things crawling toward or away from me is just not okay. It really freaks me out. So that's where we're ending it tonight. Thank you for spending another night with me. These are the stories that always linger, not because they have a crazy twist or a haunted location, but because we never know what could have happened. If you enjoyed tonight's broadcast, we would really appreciate you following and leaving a comment or review or sharing with a friend. It really means so much to us. If you're craving even more stories, you can head over to our Patreon where you will get bonus episodes. And if you have a story that you want shared with the world, please send it in. You can email us at statichourpodcast@gmail.com or comment on any of our social media sites, and we will definitely get it. I'm Bree, and you've been listening to The Static Hour. We are going off the air. Good night.